I decided to run for the presidency as a rookie senator. Many people did not believe that was possible, but I was convinced. And then I was president for 4 years, where I had to deal with very complex issues, including the pandemic, the migration crisis with Venezuelans in Colombia, having to deal with an economic recovery, but also having the purpose of embracing green policies to transform my countries.
I want to welcome everyone back to the Green Hour. We're here live at the Concordia Annual Summit during Climate Week, New York City. I'm sitting here with former President of Colombia, Iván Duque. Thank you so much for joining us today.
President, thank you so much, and it's a pleasure for me to be here in the Green Hour.
So I think first question is, you're the youngest elected president in Colombia's history at 41 years old. So how did you become president at such a young age?
Well, it was life purpose, man. Since I was very young, maybe when I was 7, I started to think that I wanted to be president of Colombia. So at that time, maybe it was a dream. And as life was passing by, it turned into an ambition. And then it turned into a vocation, which is the willingness of doing something for the purpose of serving. So I started my career very early in politics. When I was 19, I was Deputy Secretary General of my party at that time, the Liberal Party. Then I worked in the Ministry of Finance. Then I was appointed to be the senior advisor to the Executive Director of Colombia and Peru at the Inter-American Development Bank. So I was there at the board for about a decade. Then I worked in the UN. Then I went back to the IDB to be division chief. I had worked with former President Uribe in his international agenda. And when he wanted to create a new party based on center principles, I was invited to go back to Colombia and run for the Senate. So I did it. And at that moment, I had the call that return to Colombia was for me to embrace the path to fulfill that dream and that vocation. So I was in the Senate for 4 years. I was a rookie senator, was elected 3 years in a row, best senator by my colleagues. And I decided to run for the presidency as a rookie senator. Many people did not believe that was possible, but I was convinced. And we won the nomination in my party, won the general primaries, won the first round, second round. And then I was president for 4 years, where I had to deal with very complex issues, including the pandemic, the migration crisis with Venezuelans in Colombia, having to deal with an economic recovery, but also having the purpose of embracing green policies to transform my country. So that's more or less a summary of how that process evolved. And I feel very proud and honored of being president of my country and being able to serve the Colombian people.
You talk about green policy. The reason we wanted to speak to you so much is because you're one of the, I would say, leading presidents of the past that's really stood on climate policy and implemented things. So how did you use that as a platform?
More than a platform, I was always convinced. I grew up in a family where taking care of the environment was important. My mom and my dad took me to the páramos when I was a kid, learn about the frailejones and those high altitude ecosystems. I grew up also being present in rural areas of Colombia, being able to have that personal interaction with nature. So I grew up understanding the value of conservation. In the 90s, where I was a high school student, I participated actively in conservation campaigns. It was the time of the Earth Summit in Rio. And I remember I was always wearing a shirt, saving the planet, and trying to promote responsibility from our own human perspective and how to protect nature. So I grew up with that. And then professionally, I studied law and I specialized in finance, but I moved also to international environmental law. So I was involved in the IDB during my time as an advisor and a chief of staff in supporting supporting SECI, which was the Sustainable Energy and Climate Change Initiative. So I was always involved in this. And as a senator, I promoted the electric vehicle bill. I promoted the B Corp system in Colombia. I was active in the Climate Change Commission or a special commission. And then when I run for office, I said, I want to make Colombia a hub for new energies. I want to make Colombia a champion of protected areas, promote the circular economy, launch a taxonomy, and being able to demonstrate that Colombia could be a leader in climate action policy. And we were able to pass unanimously the climate action bill, have the climate action cabinet, promote all the sets of policy, including the launching of the green taxonomy at the New York Stock Exchange, making the first green bonds and the first green impact bonds in Colombia, and connecting with the multilateral system, funding specialized and focalized in supporting the protected areas of my country. So we were able to meet 30 before 30 in 2022. We were able to expand the non-conventional renewable energies by more than 100 times. And I feel very proud of what we did. And we left Colombia being one of the great leaders in LATAM when it came to climate action policies.
What you did in your tenure as president of Colombia, you obviously grew sustainability a lot, right, in all these different areas. Where does Colombia sit right now? Are these policies still being implemented today?
Some, sadly, we have an administration that it's iconoclastic, just want to destroy everything that existed before. Is the Adanistic vision that history begins and ends with them. So that's not only egomaniac, but it's quite stupid to govern a country with the idea of destroying everything that was done in the past. I actually build upon many of the things that I inherited. I build upon the legacy of many of my predecessors, and that's why we passed from 13% to more than 31% protected areas on land, and from 14% to more than 38% in maritime territory. That's why we were able to become leaders in the carbon credit market in LATAM. That's why we made a dual auction for non-conventional renewables, passing from 0.2% of the energy matrix in that kind of energy to more than 14%, or launching the circular economy, or making Ecopetrol the largest auto generator with non-conventional renewable energies. So all those things happened because we were committed in governing with management and results. Today, some of those policies still remain. But I think the fact that there's not a managerial administration, that everything is ideological, has made many of the players that saw Colombia as the destiny for these kinds of investments to be driven by uncertainty at this time. But, hopefully we'll have a new government in next year with a clear understanding that this must be a mandatory conviction and that we need to accelerate all these transformations, and that we can pass the page of populism and demagoguery.
I do want to understand the climate action law a little bit more.
Yeah, well, that was an interesting way of proceeding, because we made a commitment of our NDCs. We said we want to reduce our emissions by 51% by 2030. One of the most ambitious goals, not only in the global south, but worldwide. And then after we said that, it was clear that we need to know what was the contribution that each specific sector needed to do in order to achieve that reduction, or to achieve our NDCs. And so we had agriculture, we had transportation, we had construction, we had a multiplicity of sectors. So once we got the bill approved unanimously, we built the Climate Action Cabinet. It was chaired by me. It was also monitored by the special or the chief of staff of the presidency, who was a special envoy for these causes, the ministry. We sat every month and understood which were the KPIs of each sector. And the beauty of that is that we were one of the countries that was ahead in fulfilling its NDCs on time. So it worked as a way in which we called all the parties, all the political spectrum, and said, this is not left or right. This is a moral duty. We have to fulfill it. And that's why we got so much support. And then based on that, we launched the green taxonomy at the New York Stock Exchange. So investors said, wow, this is based on the KPIs. So we can either issue a bond, we can have a debt swap, we could have an impact bond from the private sector, but everybody knew which were the indicators that we had to fulfill.
So one more thing I want to touch on, while you were president of Colombia, you created military units focusing on protecting ecosystem.
Yeah, well, that was something that it seemed controversial at the time. But I think what we were inspired to do was to demonstrate that natural assets can also be national security assets. If you destroy a high altitude ecosystem, you're putting in danger the source of water for many cities. If you destroy the Amazon jungle, you're putting in danger the connection among ecosystems. If you harm a river by contaminating it, you're going to destroy many of the life that depends on that river. So yes, we declared those natural resources as national security assets, and we also work with the military and the police to protect those assets. We actually passed a new environmental crime legislation so that crimes against nature will have imprisonment sentence. And that was also quite important. But Artemisa, for example, was an operation to fight deforestation, and it had the carrot and stick, and it worked. We actually got a great reduction on the deforestation rate. But hand in hand with that, we had the high altitude battalions that worked in the Paramos areas that became planters and protectors of the frailejones, that endemic species in the high altitude ecosystems that regulates the cycles of water. So I think that connection was quite important, and the Colombian army and the Colombian military and police forces were internationally recognized because of their environmental commitment as well.
So the final thing I want to talk about, like I said, we were listening to the Swift Hour last night with you and Matt Swift, and you talked about the founding of the Concordia Amazonas Summit. Could you talk through how that came to be and what the summit is?
Well, man, I'm always full of ideas and projects, and I thought it was going to be great to have an experience, not to do networking, but to build alliances, friendship, vision. And that's how I came with the idea. And I told Matt, I want to get rid of our suits and ties and get into the heart of nature, and being able to leave our titles, our influence, our power aside, and be in full connection with nature and have a reflection on how to protect it, how to protect the Amazon biome, but also enjoy the richness of the Amazon biome. So we went to Ecuador. So and we went to Tena. We were in the rivers. We were with indigenous communities, and we created such a bonding among the group. Then next year we went to Guyana, and in Guyana we not only made progress on policy, we made progress on MOUs that were signed. We made progress working with indigenous communities, but we made progress influencing also decisions by President Ali in order to meet 30 way before 2030. And this year we went to Pará. We were with Governor Balbalo. We were able to launch our work for COP. And now we are telling everybody, we're announcing that next year, Colombia is going to be the country that is going to host the Concordia Amazon Initiative. So it has been growing. It has been advancing. Each country is different. The challenges of organizing are way different. But I think we have been able to demonstrate that we can bring top minds from conservation, private sector, public sector, academia, nonprofits to the heart of the Amazon, and each one of them know that they have to contribute in order to protect and defend the ecosystem.
Well, President Duque, we can't thank you enough for coming on the Green Hour today.
Well, it's such a pleasure, and congratulations for this podcast, man. Now you owe me one. Next time you have to be in my podcast,
Yes,
Tres Respuestas.
definitely.
So we do a collaboration,
Definitely.
all right?
Thank you so
Take
much.
care, man.
Yes.
Bye-bye, President.